Hi, I'm Rob Coston with Nautilus International, speaking here today to our Director of Legal Services, Charles Boyle. Thanks very much for joining me, Charles.
Oh, you're welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, so we wanted to discuss very briefly the situation with our super yacht members working on board Russian yachts. Obviously, this is a situation that's been going on now for several years, and Nautilus has been doing some real sterling work on this for our members. So first of all, Charles, just taking it back to the beginning, after the invasion of Ukraine, what was it that happened to our members and other yacht professionals working on yachts owned by Russian owners?
Well, as a result of that invasion, the EU sanctions regime came into force, which the UK, even post-Brexit, has still adopted. So the UK has effectively implemented the EU sanctions against yachts that are owned by Russian oligarchs or those who've got connections with Russia. There's also an American sanction regime as well. So there's global, effectively there's global sanctions in place. And that resulted in several of our members getting in touch, firstly with our yacht team, whom I work closely with, to complain that they hadn't been paid their wages. And as it turned out, that quite large groups of numbers on these yachts had accumulated quite a lot of unpaid wages, which we've been working on ever since.
When we're talking about unpaid wages here, my understanding of these can be very large sums of money, even for each individual involved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some of those individuals are owed over 100,000 euros each. There can be a claim on one yacht, for instance. We're definitely talking about over, I think at least on two of the yachts that we're working on, where the totality of the claim for all crew members is over £1 million, or all Nautilus members even. There'll be crew on those yachts who are not members of Nautilus, but obviously we are helping the Nautilus members and taking quite a lot of various actions against various yachts to try and recover these monies in this very precarious situation.
Yeah, and of course, in the super yacht sector, we deal with unpaid wages all the time for yachts, which is a shame, but it's something we're used to. How have these cases differed from those more normal cases of unpaid wages?
Well, I think with the more normal case, we're usually talking about a ship owner or an employer who's either insolvent or, if solvent, is just downright unwilling to pay. It's not unusual for our members to come and say that they've been sacked suddenly and they think there's an underlying reason, but the ship owner's not made it clear. They're relying on some other sort of reason, like pretending there's a redundancy situation or something like this. Usually the only obstacle we've got is taking action against, this unwilling debtor. But with the yacht sector, it can either be that as well, but, the overarching problem is the sanctions regime, whereby that has led to many companies carrying out, ultra compliance work to make sure that they don't pass on money to another party in a chain of money coming from a Russian oligarch. They're scared themselves of breaching sanctions and subsequently criminal offences. So effectively, it stopped the money flow. There's some exceptions whereby employers or agencies, etc., can apply for licenses, by the sanctions authorities, giving them authority to pay for specific amounts of money in specific circumstances. But it's caused a lot of problems for companies and their banks. And, in a lot of cases, genuinely has frozen the money flow, even although we do have ship owners who certainly would pay if they had the money. We've got some who wouldn't pay. There's a mixture of factors, but I think it's true to say that the most serious issue is the sanctions regime, which has thrown a real spanner into the usual legal machinery for recovering monies.
Yeah, so I know we can't comment on specific cases, which is a shame because quite often we have some real successes. But overall, how have things gone over the last couple of years for our members in these situations? Have we largely met with success, and what are we talking about in terms of successes or money recovered?
Yeah. Well, there's 4 yachts in particular that I'm working on at the moment. I can't talk about one in particular because there's lots of news in the public domain about it. This is the Alfa Nero, which is currently under arrest by Nautilus in Antigua and Barbuda. Now, even although we've arrested that vessel, we are trying to enforce the cruise maritime lien against the owner. But it's even more complicated there because although they are subject there to US sanctions, there's also a dispute about the true ownership of the vessel. For instance, the Russian owner's daughter has joined the legal proceedings, claiming that actually the yacht doesn't belong to her father, it actually belongs to her. So that has complicated things as well. Also, the government of Antigua have basically got concerns about any environmental dangers that the yacht imposes. So they also have stuck their oar in and become a party to the proceedings as well through the Attorney General in Antigua. And at the same time, we are trying to enforce the maritime lien for the crew. Now, the good news is that in December, we actually did get a positive judgment from the High Court in Antigua that would partially resolve the issue. It said that over a year's worth of wages was due to the crew, but it denied that double pay was due. Now, we've actually appealed against that on advice from our lawyers. But that is the most positive step so far, actually getting that judgment in favour. And we now await to basically try and get the money on the proceeds of sale when the vessel is sold to satisfy the judgment we've got so far and hopefully satisfy any parts that we're successful on with the appeal. Now, we've also got 2 other yachts in Germany. I wouldn't name them, but we've basically had arrest warrants issued by the High Court in Germany against each of those yachts. However, there is a peculiarity in German law whereby if a third party is in possession of the asset, i.e. the yachts, as is the case here, the dockyard, because the dockyard is also trying to claim money for work done on the vessels, the German courts cannot force a third party to accept the arrest orders. So we've not been able to accept those arrest orders yet. But we continue with negotiations, etc., hope that the position will change, and we're constantly working to see if we can resolve that issue as well. We've also recently arrested another yacht in Montenegro, and we basically we don't have the problems that we have in Germany. The Montenegro situation is much more like the Antiguan situation. So we still wait on that going through the courts to see how that resolves.
Yeah, I know some of these cases can go on for a very long time and can be very complex. Of course, this situation's been going on for a couple of years, and my understanding is that we've managed to recover some very significant sums already in other cases which have been resolved.
Yeah, those are more like the normal run of cases that we've managed to resolve. But yeah, there have been a few cases where there's been sanctions issues which were resolved at a much earlier stage, usually through our yacht team getting involved in the negotiations and consulting me. But the 4 in particular that I referred to are the really serious ones where we're still working hard to try and press for a resolution.
And given that this is all ongoing, what advice would you give to yacht professionals in general about working on yachts with Russian connections? Do we have standard advice for that?
Well, my advice would be probably not to take the job up because there is a real danger that even if the individual who owns it is not already sanctioned or a bank or business in connection with the yacht, there is the chance that they will become sanctioned at some stage. So there is a real and significant danger that they will not be paid either from the onset of employment or at some point during their employment, there is a real problem that they'll have issues getting paid. My advice would be to carry out all due diligence and prefer for a yacht not involved in such complications or not likely to get involved in such issues.
And let's say somebody had got involved, had already worked on one of these yachts, and then found themselves in a situation where they weren't being paid. What would be your advice to them then?
Well, so long as they had not joined the yacht after it became clear that there was a notorious issue of non-payment on Russian yachts, that it was not their, they're not caught in this problem through their own lack of due diligence, then Nautilus would, of course, still try to help them in the usual way. But that's why we're warning those who are thinking of taking jobs up with Russian yachts now, that we already know now that there's problems here. The people that we are currently helping on the yachts I referred to were basically already on the yachts before the Russian invasion started. They weren't there through any lack of due diligence on their part. They couldn't have foreseen these sanctions coming in. But those people now who are aware of these stories, they're members of Nautilus, the stories going around in the press, they should be very well aware of the significant risk that they will not be paid if they join a Russian yacht, or if the yacht is flagged in Russia or owned by a Russian oligarch or someone in connection with the Putin regime may well be sanctioned. They can always contact, for instance, in the UK, we've got the Office of Financial Sanctions, OFSI, have a website that actually has a full list of the current persons who are sanctioned. They can always ask who the owner is and check on that list to see if they're on it. But my advice would be, don't take the risk of employment on such a yacht if there's good employment going on other yachts with no such complications.
Okay, thank you. Well, Charles, thanks very much for the update on all of this. And as some of those big cases are resolved, I really hope to talk to you again about the resolution and what we've managed to achieve there.